Hey everybody, this is Oliver Joyce with another Swords and Sandals Immortals update. Probably one of the last ones, really. I mean, I estimate we've got about maybe 3 months or so development remaining on the game before it goes into full launch. I finished the observatories last week, and I hope you guys have enjoyed those, fighting the automatons and playing the mini games to basically weaken and delay the Starbound Gladiator. But the next thing, get a bit more light on the situation, which is kind of ironic because I'm about to talk about the darkness. The next thing coming to the game, of course, is the Dungeons update. And I literally started work on that on Monday. It's now Thursday here in Australia. And so I'm about 4 days into it. I got nothing to show you. Nothing at all, I'm afraid. Right now, I'm sort of working on the behind the scenes code to sort of make it all happen and everything. It's going to be some weeks before I can reveal anything to you. I don't know how long it's going to take, to be completely honest. I'm really hoping to get something done by, mid-December, ideally. I'd love to have it out before Christmas and everything, because then the game is pretty much complete aside from multiplayer, and that can come, when it's ready. But the Dungeons update is a little more in-depth than anything we've seen in the game so far. I just want to kind of also curb your expectations just a little, because this is not some huge Diablo-style roguelike or anything like that. It's not even close to as big as the dungeons in Sword and Sandals 5, because those dungeons were, in fact, at the heart of the game. The whole game was based around dungeons, and arena combat was kind of like, a throw-in. Instant coffee that'll put hair on your chest whether you want it or not. One day I'll get myself a decent coffee machine. One day. I've said that for years. Speaking of Sword and Sandals 5, that has in many ways become the influence for dungeons in Sword and Sandals Immortals, although not in the way you think. What I kind of liked about the dungeons in Sword and Sandals 5 were, although they were sort of, roguelites in a way that had the random maps and everything like that, what I did like was had various items you could interact with, and doors you could open and close, and traps and things like that. I want to put that basic sort of dungeon system into Sword and Sandals Immortals with a light system and a hunger clock, which is of course why there's been food available to buy in Sword and Sandals, even though you had nothing to do with it so far. Stockpile it up because you're going to need it in these dungeons. But what I want to do is translate these dungeons into 3D. Now, if you think I'm kind of crazy, you might be right. But, in Godot, which is a program I'm using right now, as opposed to working back in the old Flash days, I actually can do 3D. And this kind of 3D is going to be really simple. If you've played games like Legend of Grimrock, or even as far back as Eye of the Beholder, or even further back, let's go right back to the original, Ultima and Akalabeleth. These had really simple 3D dungeons that you move forward one step at a time, and you turn at 90-degree angles, and step, and then there'd be a door there that needed a key or whatever. I'm going to put that in Sword and Sandals Immortals, and I've got some template code thanks to a great Godot developer called Heartbeast, and I'm going to be implementing his dungeon code into my game, and then of course refining it and changing it, and turning it into a full dungeon system, because his code it basically gives you the building blocks to move around in this 3D world. And I think it's just going to be a fun little change from the the combat. Basically the whole flow of the game is combat, move around a map, more combat. But I think having these 8 dungeons that you can visit will break things up a little bit. Okay, right now I just want to give a quick shout out to my legendary Patreon supporters, Dane, Simono, and Stonegold. Welcome, new guys, and I hugely appreciate your support. Welcome to the team. And I've actually got an interview coming up with Dane later today. And Dane does a lot of tech tips on his own YouTube channel, and we're just going to be talking tech and game dev and that kind of stuff. And I'll post a link to that on my own social media stuff later. So look forward to that. But big shout out to Dane and Stone God, Daniel Funches, Pookie, Barty X, Cheese Chow, Brandon K, Ilya Gurovich, Pipuch, Timmy Boy, X Up Omega, Jeffro of Hex3D, Hopeless, Eunice, and Noah Gudajan. Legends all. And if you want to be a legend like these guys, you know the drill. If you'd like to be a Patreon, that would make my day. And it takes an awful lot to make Thargan's day. Okay, back to the dungeon stuff. One of the challenges with building a game like Sword and Sandals is the combat is very in-depth. There's a lot going on, and it doesn't necessarily translate that well to a dungeon system, and it will be really complicated of me to put every skill and every rule and everything in a dungeon kind of game. And basically that would make the game Sword and Sandals 5, and that game took years to make. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably, and I'm not 100% sure about this, I'm going to have traps and puzzles and things and, you know, things to solve in the dungeons, but combat itself is probably not going to be part of the dungeon system, other than to say that there will be a dungeon boss in every dungeon waiting for you at the end, and that will then transition from the 3D dungeon back to the 2D, you know, side-on arena that we're so familiar with, because the alternative is trying to make all these different implementations of all the attacks and tactics and so on, just for this kind of 3D system that, you know, it's still, although it's a, you know, fairly hefty, you know, thing, it's still a small side part of the game. They're not the main focus, and this would take me months and months and months. I had to think about it all yesterday and the day before, and I was like, do I put, you know, full combat in the dungeons? I decided to leave it out, and I may, and I don't know, I'm not going to lock into this, but I might have an attack button in case something like a bat or something is there, and, you know, the bat can hit you, and then you maybe just do attack and it swings whatever weapon you have, and if they hit you, you lose some health. That might be just a simple kind of compromise. But then, you know, there's always going to be people that say, why don't you know, have spells as well? Why can't I use my special abilities in the dungeons? And, you know, the reason is because it would take months and months and months, and that is not at the heart of this game. But I did want to have dungeons in the game, and I think this will be a really fun implementation of it. And so, of course, if you want to find out more about the dungeons, and if you're not subbed to the channel, please, you know, like and subscribe and all that. Once I have some footage to show you guys, I will be posting it up here on the channel, and you can let me know what you think. And as I was estimating, I'm really thinking probably mid-December. It's hard to know at this early stage because I'm really still in a sort of R&D, you know, research phase of the dungeons, and I don't have anything to really show you at this stage. But, you know, it does feel fun. It does feel almost like making a new game, you know, even though there's all of this huge amount of legacy stuff from the rest of the game. It does feel nice to branch off in the same way that doing the mini games for Swords and Sandals Immortals was fun in the Observatory update. You know, when you're working on the one game for months and months, and, you know, in this case, almost 2 years, it does start to sort of get a little tiring, and the systems get so heavy that you find a lot of your day is just sort of, you know, trying to fix bugs and, you know, working on the same few things, and it doesn't really feel fun, you know. And not that it's a job, it is a job, and not that all game dev is fun. You know, a lot of game dev is just doing UI and bug fixing and marketing and, you know, the non-fun stuff. Maybe 10% of it is the fun stuff. I mean, it's not like I'm working in a coal mine or actually doing any real hard labor. This is, you know, still a legendary career to have, and I'm so honored and grateful to be doing it. But, you know, a lot of it is kind of mundane as well. All right, guys. Thanks for being a fan of the channel. Thanks for watching this week. Big shout out to those who bought the game in the Halloween sale. Halloween update is about to end, and I'm going to change the game a little bit so you can still do the Halloween quests at a certain point in the game, maybe between like 150 and 120 days. I'll work out how that's going to go. Probably do that next week, and that will be the next big patch. Before the rest of the patches are going to be mainly maintenance patches, not much new content until the dungeons. All right, my friends, have a brilliant Thursday heading into the weekend, maybe Friday by the time you watch this. And until next time, bye for now.